Hello? Hello?
Hello, Sona.
Hello?
Hello. Hello. You just
Can you hear me?
Yes.
absolutely, yep.
You can hear me?
Yes.
Is that wrong
We can hear you.
with you?
You've frozen on my screen. Oh. You were there and then you disappeared.
I'm not sure if
If that's one of the movements, I'm not sure I can do.
Can you hear me now?
Yep. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me now? Yeah?
Yeah.
I can hear you. I don't know who Okay, good. We can start. Just adjust the angle of the camera a little bit more. See what I'm doing. Okay, so we start off with the usual, having a little swing. No one seems to be moving. Everyone seems frozen. Okay, some people are moving now. Hello.
You know, they were swinging away.
Oh, good. Okay. Hope you can all hear me.
They're all going for it. They don't need to anymore.
Okay, that'll do. And now let your arms come down to rest.
Sona will go off and have a fag now while he would do it anyway.
And now just let your arms swing backwards and forwards. Can you ask them? Who is it? Who's on the text today? Oh, good. Excellent. Just what I was going to ask. So Vijayamala's going off to bed now. Oh, I'm just going to do some hand cycling outside. Just so you know, we haven't got any slackers in here. So be aware of your breathing. Just let the arms swing, feel the shoulders lifting at the back. Okay, come to rest. And then we could do the crane movement. If you breathe in, your arms and legs come up and away. Breathe out, they go down, of course. If you want to lift your legs higher, if you feel like it, you can do. And you can even pause there for a moment to have a little balance and then come down. All right, and then come to rest, have a little shake.
Can't hear you, Sona. Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think my microphone battery ran out. So, where was I? The other side, yes. Taking your hand, back of the neck, and then moving the nose around, circular motion. Sorry, I've got the wrong hand there. Sometimes your neck clicks a little bit. Apparently there's gases caught between the vertebrae or the bones, joints. It's released with a little crack. Go around the other way. Following your breath. Okay, and then release, a little shake. And then we do the turtle and the bird drinking water. First of all, the turtle. So you push your chin out, lift your chin up, pull it in, and go round. And then link this with your breathing. So as you breathe in, your head comes up, and breathe out as you go down. Like a turtle licking up some water, swallowing it. One more time. And come to the middle. Now it's a bird drinking water. So what you do now is you got too many wires here, hold on. Okay, now what you do is you lift your head up, take it forward. So you're going up with the in-breath and down with the out-breath. Okay, and then have another little shake. And then we'll just do this movement. Do you want this?
Okay, good. Thanks.
This movement with the shoulders. So if you've got a belt or a shawl or a towel or something, you can take hold of, and just holding low down on the strap or towel, and then you just lift up the upper arm and the lower arm will come up. You pull the lower arm down and the upper arm will go down. And you see if you can coordinate this with, or follow your breathing. I'm sure you can coordinate it with your breathing. Follow your breathing, breathing out as your hand comes up, breathing in, out when your hand goes down. Breathing in, breathing out in that motion. Couple more times. Breathing in when the hand comes up. Breathing out when the hand goes down. Okay. And then release and change sides. So breathing in as the hand comes up, and breathing out as the hand goes down. So not hurting. You could easily hurt yourself if you pulled too hard with the upper hand. So just easing the shoulders gently, following your breathing. All right, one more time. And then have a good shake. And then you could just try taking your hand up your back and see if your fingers come closer together. You may need a strap to do this. And what you do is you kind of just, as it were, walk your fingers towards each other. You can keep adjusting. You can't probably focus on the breathing until you can touch, until you've gone as far as you can. And when you've gone as far as you can, you just stand there with the breath, holding your hands or holding with a strap or towel or something. You keep smiling. And this hand, if it's out to the side here, you could try if you wanted to, moving it slightly behind your head, and the fingers will come a bit closer together. If your shoulders is, if it's loose, if it's very tight, it'd be difficult to move it. So you just ease. If you do this every day for a couple, just hold it for a couple of days, you'll be surprised how much more movement you'll get in your shoulder. Both shoulders, one side's usually tighter than the other. Vidyamala couldn't do this a couple of years ago on one side, but now she can quite happily get her fingers touching on the other side. If you can clip your fingers together, but some people are so loose. I remember when I was a young man in my early 20s, when I was a yoga teacher, I could hold my wrist, but the body changes, usually for the worst as you get older. And you just keep breathing, keep smiling. And then release. Have a shake. And then just doing some nice, quiet, calming, mindful movements with the in-breath, the hands coming up to the top of the chest, and the out-breath going down. You're not lifting the shoulders, your elbows come up with the hands. So you're not doing this either. So you're trying to lift the shoulders, the arms up, the elbows up, and the upper arms. Breathing in, and sort of as though your hands are just pressing down a balloon into water, or a hot air balloon, just holding it as it goes down. Okay, and then we can take this into a bigger movement. The hands come up and they can tip into the face, they go up and then round. Breathe in, come up, drop. If you don't have to tip your head back if your neck is a bit stiff, or if you feel unsure whether you should be tipping your neck back. It's quite a strong movement. Just keep your head looking straight ahead. You can do this either way. But if your neck feels like it wants to move a bit, you can just look up a little way, tip the eyes back. And if you feel like it, if you feel like a bit of a stretch, when the hands come up, you could just stop for a moment and then come down. Breathing in as your hands go up, stop and come down. Or you may be just doing it like this. It's all good. Whatever. Some days you just feel like, you know what, I don't feel like stretching. I just feel like a little bit of movement, but nothing difficult. So whatever you feel it's right for you to be doing now. Taking responsibility for yourself and your body. Okay, and then release the hands. And then we do a couple of these other movements. There's eight of these movements with 8 repetitions. So the first one is where you place your hands flat on top of your head. So there's my palms, turning them facing up. Take a breath, and as you breathe out, your hands come up. Breathe in, hands go down. And again, if you feel like lengthening through the arms, you can do. But don't overdo it. It's just a nice movement. So think of it more as meditation rather than sport, yoga, or other body exercises. Don't think of it as exercise. Puts you off, doesn't it? Just meditation in motion. Like last time. Hands down. Now the hands come up, and then you pull towards your two strings, pull them apart, and then push. Breathing in as you come round, breathing out as you go apart. As though you imagine you're pulling and then pushing. You can almost feel the weight of the strings and then pushing apart. And one last time. And then let the hands come down. And the next movement is placing the hand by the hip and the other hand on the shoulder. And as you're breathing out, you're following that out breath by pushing the hands away. One hand's going down towards the floor, one to the ceiling. Swap over. Breathing in and breathe out. Follow the hand stretching. Follow the breath with the hand stretching. Last time. Okay, and the hands come down. The next movement, the upper body, I'll just do it. I'm actually on my knees at the moment. Is done like this. As though your hands come up with an in-breath, and you're so pushing. And as you're pushing, you're turning. And as you're turning, you're dipping these hands down, and then looking up behind you a little way. I need to stand up to do that because it's good for my back. So you breathe out, go around, look up at the moon like a cow, tilting its head, breathing in, breathing out, twisting round, breathing in, breathe out, let the hands relax, breathe in, as your hands come up, breathe out, so you follow the out breath round. Okay. And last time. Okay, great. A little shake. Okay, and in this next movement, you take the weight over. I'm taking the weight over to my right foot. You could use the left foot. So this foot's more or less, so that it's not taking any weight at all. You see I'm lifting it off the floor. But you can just place it on the floor to help you balance. And with the hips going in this direction, the upper body goes in that direction. So as you breathe in, hand comes up and just kind of loops over. You don't need to stretch it. The weight of the hand is just helping you to go down with the out breath. Breathing out. You can bounce down the leg a little way if you feel like it. Breathing in. Breathing out. So it's a nice gentle movement for the spine. Breathing out last time. Okay, and then we'll shake. Make sure I'm not going to hit the gym arm. So the next movement, I've got a light as well there. Be careful. You breathe in, the hands come up, over, all the way with the in-breath, and then with the out-breath, the knees just bend a little, and you take the hands past the knees. You don't need to go down like Vidyamala as if you're standing. You just go. In fact, it's good to look straight ahead the whole time if you can, but that won't be possible if you're on the chair. Breathing in and breathing out. Following your breath rather than mine. one more time. Okay. And then the next movement to get rid of any aggression that you may be having, you take your thumbs, fold them over, your fingers over your thumbs. Pull your hands back to your chest. You can look mean in this if you want to. It's quite good to change your facial expression sometimes, because otherwise people just stand there looking like this and doing things. So, you know, enjoy things and be a little bit of an actor. So you're going to punch maybe a bag like that, but you're going to do it slowly, all right? So it's kind of with the breath. Otherwise it wouldn't be a mindful movement. So you breathe in, and as you breathe out, the hand comes forward, following the breath, and just give a little twist, a little poke at the end. Do it one more time. And on the other side. Okay, good. And then lastly, we're going to take the hands up the back as far as we can, just below the rib, not too high, but just around about the base of the rib cage where it joins. And then you can bounce up and down if you want to, or you could just massage the back with the knuckles and the hand. Personally, I find it quite pleasant just bouncing up and down, because then the arms don't really have to do anything, because the movement itself just makes the hands go up and down. Okay, and then have a little stretch. And a couple more upper body movements to end with. First of all, peeling off the top. So the arms come up with the in-breath. With the out-breath, they go across. You lift up, peel the top, and go down. You breathe in. You swap arms over. The other hand goes over the top. And the out-breath going round and down. And then the in-breath comes in, and the out-breath goes out. The in-breath comes in, and the out-breath goes out. One more time. Okay. And a similar movement, just giving yourself a hug, and really mean it when you hug yourself. Like you're just a wonderful being, so you need to give yourself a lovely hug. So your arms come up with the in-breath, and with the out-breath you go around, get your arms around it. Oh, yes, I love you, Sona. Oh, you'd say your own name, of course. And then come round and go down. And then the hands go around over the other side. Oh, you can go like this if you want to. Oh, yes, get a bit of oxytocin into the system. Ah, it'll feel good. It's like really caring about yourself. Yeah. Oh. You don't have to do all this bouncing. You can just give a hug. Anyway, no one's watching you. At least I'm not, because I'm watching myself to make sure I'm doing it correctly. All right, I think that will do, actually. I think we'll just do a bit of tapping to end with. So just if you like to, you just take your fingers and just round. If you've got glasses off, take them off and just tap the cheeks and the ears, back of the neck. And then just forming a loose fist with a hand. You're just going to tap. You start off with your shoulders, go around the back if you can. And then you can just, you're not hitting yourself, you're not like whipping yourself or anything like that. You're just kind of encouraging the blood and energy to flow more freely, like a little Swedish massage. Use the side of their hands when I've had massage in Sweden. A couple of times. And then you can go around, you need to turn the hands around, leave the hands like that and take them around the back. And then you can just give them up near the kidneys a tap. When you get down to the hips, you can turn the hands the other way again. Good tapping on the bottom. You can come round and tap just round the front. And be gentle on the hips if you're getting on a bit in life. If you've got problems with the hips, just encouraging. And you can give your mass, it's not nice tapping the tummy, I like to give it a good rub. And then go back to the tapping, and you can go down your leg, around the front and back, coming up, go up and down a couple of times. And then the other side. Good. And then just go shake your fingers, put your hands together for a lovely rub. Get some energy going in the hands. Keep smiling. Rub your face in a minute. Oh, yes. Give your face a nice rub. Clear energy. And the great thing about Zoom, it always looks better, your face, if you've got the making it better enhancement on. And you can give your body a little, one more time. Yes, nice body, even when it hurts. It's still good to have on. Okay, thank you very much, and I hope you manage to keep up your mindful movements throughout your life. Keep moving with your breathing, and you'll become a master of mindfulness in 3 years.
Like 3 years.
It'll take you 10 hours a day, of course.
So what's the master of mindfulness?
You need 100,000 hours
10.
of practice.
I think it's 10,000.
Is it? 10,000 hours, yeah. It's a lot of hours anyway. But you can do it if you do mindful movement. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
So I think we're staying on this call for the next bit, the Q&A, but we'll take a few minutes break, certainly. So, oh no, 1:15, isn't it? 15 minutes break. Yeah.
Vishwapani.
Yes.
Hello, it's Serena.
Hello.
Hi.
I got your question, Serena.
Oh, well done. That's good. Okay, that's good. I was also going to tell you something about Adhisthana. I feel I shouldn't be talking. Should I be talking at this moment?
Well, why not? We're in a break. It's what people do in tea breaks, isn't it? You have a chat.
Okay.
But everyone can hear us. It's not a private chat.
That's all right. It's not private, what I'm going to say.
All right.
So, following on from last night when you were talking about the new retreat centre and
Yes.
things, did you know about the Barrett connection at Adhisthana?
Oh, the Barrett Brownings.
Yes, did you know about that? At home?
Vaguely. Tell me more.
Well, unfortunately, I've forgotten the full story. So that's always a good start. But Elizabeth Barrett was brought up in the house, you know the hill.
Oh, I know. Down the road.
The house down the road. But the house itself, it's called Hope End, I think, and it has a long history of disaster. You know, it's a sort of quite an extraordinary kind of doom-laden, one thing happens after another, after another, after another.
Yes.
I thought was quite interesting. Well, it just sort of, anyway, the people at the vineyard know the story.
Hmm.
That's where I got it from. But I just thought it was I was thinking of a literary, the sort of the building up of a literary network kind of thing.
Yes.
That's,
Yes. Well, yes. Okay. I mean, Browning is rather neglected these days, and Elizabeth even more. Langland lived there, lived in Ledbury, I believe. The person who wrote Piers Plowman,
right.
which is also rather neglected. Personally, I had to read it in Middle English when I did an English degree, which I have not yet forgiven.
Ledbury.
Huh?
John Masefield is from Ledbury.
John Masefield. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, didn't know that.
Another neglected person worth paying some attention to.
Okay. Yes. Yes. I'm afraid you haven't. None of this quite does it for me, like Alfoxden. It really is, because the place was so important for what happened between the poets. And in fact, there's a lot of poems describing the environment. Actually describing the countryside and the grounds. So I'm
Okay.
sorry to say I'm slightly spoiled now for these other things.
But did you know about it before? Had you heard of it? Was it something?
I had heard of it, yes.
Because I've only ever heard of when they were up on the, or is this where they were?
In Quantox.
Yes, was that.
Yes, this is where they were.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So Coleridge's house, it is in a village nearby called Netherstowey. He moved there in late 1796, and then he assiduously, he only met the Wordsworths in early 1797, but he prevailed on all his friends to come and join him there. So they did. They got a lease on this big house. Coleridge's house is a National Trust property,
right,
which is open to the public, and you can walk the Coleridge Way. But Alfoxden has been neglected, really. And yeah, it's quite a challenge, I think, to renovate it. It'll take a lot of time, a lot of money. They have some money. The whole thing was donation. Some money has gone along with that. Yeah.
Well, that's good. I didn't know about the big house. I just thought they were all squashed in the cottage. I just thought
No. So on the one hand, Coleridge with Sarah Coleridge and Hartley were all in the cottage, and they had guests to start with, and then William and Dorothy had this great big mansion. I mean, they didn't have a lot of money. In fact, they didn't really have any money, but they just found themselves in a mansion.
Quite right too.
Quite right too. Yeah, they stayed there for a year.
Very nice.
They got turfed out by the owners, who didn't like the fact that they were seemingly radicals and they were attracting a lot of attention and gossip and doing things like going for late night walks, looking over the sea, bearing in mind that this was wartime.
Oh.
And the Home Office sent a spy down.
Oh.
And so this is in the biographies that this story is told. Because the records of his reports are there in the archives, so it's all been told and retold. But yeah, so they were considered radicals, even though they were losing their radicalism, in fact. Losing their political radicalism because of what they had seen in the French Revolution.
Well, I was very glad to have that your reading last night. It was yeah. So I have been to Tintern Abbey and Simmons Yat and everything, and the Wye Valley, and there was a yatra along the Wye Valley a couple of years ago, which unfortunately I missed, but I have been there, and it is a beautiful place. And I tried reading the poem, and quite honestly, I couldn't get anything from it at all, I'm afraid, because I'm, but it was really helpful to have your elucidation. I'm going to try again.
Could I add something to that? Inga, have you finished?
Yeah, who's that?
Yes, I've only just...
Oh, Akash and Andy.
Akash and Andy. I've only just listened. I couldn't make it last night. So it really beautiful. Just to share that when I was 21 at college, I walked along Offa's Dyke in order to inhabit that poem. I thought it was. I stayed watching over Tintern Abbey, and yeah, really very, very touched by the poems, and wasn't mature enough to understand them, but they really touched me. I'm really inspired to visit them again by your sharing them with us.
The
So
poems meaning which ones? Wordsworth.
Yes, it was Wordsworth. I'd studied him at A level 3 years before. Yes, and incredibly spiritually moved, but I didn't really know what it was.
Yes.
And it was something I wanted more of.
Yeah.
And hadn't got the maturity then really to make some connection, but not sufficiently. So yes, I'm going back to them. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah. You need to find a good selection of Wordsworth's poems. He wrote a lot, but actually after he passed his mid-30s, he wrote very little that is remembered, still relevant.
Is that because it wasn't so good after his 30s? Oh, isn't that interesting? Why do you think that is?
Wow, that is much debated. But I mean, one thing was that he and Coleridge fell out. And that's a story, and it's partly to do with Coleridge becoming very, very difficult to be around because he was an addict, an opium addict. But it's also to do with the tensions between them and in that relationship. There were other things. So, Wordsworth really idealized childhood. And then he and his wife, Mary, had, I think it was they had a lot of children. Anyway, 2 of them died. And at around the same time, their brother, John, died. So yes. So he never, I don't know. He also became increasingly respectable and all that. I'll tell you, I was thinking the other day that Wordsworth and Coleridge remind me a little bit of Lennon and McCartney. That's an analogy. And to start off with, they seem like a team, right? They're the Beatles. And the songs are all by Lennon and McCartney. And it's all fine, seemingly. But gradually, it stopped working. And they went their separate ways. And individually, Lennon and McCartney, I mean, arguably, at least, they didn't really, they never produced the same magic that they had when they were together, even though they couldn't be together. And I think there's something like that with Wordsworth and Coleridge. I mean, Wordsworth actually kept writing for a good 7 years. Coleridge wrote almost all of his best work in that very intense period.
Gosh.
I mean, there are later things, but the great majority of it is the work that remains interesting. Was written really in a period of a year or two, when he was very, very close to Wordsworth and very influenced by him. So yeah, Lennon and McCartney. And of course, if you have to ascribe roles, then
Yes.
I think Coleridge has got to be
Lennon.
John Lennon, because what is John Lennon's most famous post-Beatles song?
Imagine.
Imagine. Wordsworth Coleridge was a philosopher of imagination. So there you go. Whether you can exactly equate Paul McCartney and William Wordsworth is another question. But yeah, they turn out to be very different characters. Underneath, they had so much in common, but underneath, really very different. Anyway, so are we back? Just give people a little bit longer too.
Yeah.
But I was reading Sangharakshita's poetry recently. I mean, after he died, I read a lot, and I wrote a piece about him that appeared in the collected book. And I came to the conclusion that, in my view, he wrote most of his best work before he was 30, which is the mid-1950s. Some of it's really quite good, but there's an awful lot, in fact, 60 years worth of poetry after that.
Wow.
Now, there are some things I like after that, but I think he stopped being a poet and he became something else. He became a prose writer who occasionally wrote poems. Anyway, that's my opinion. Some people would probably be deeply offended.
I wonder
Their
what
favourite Bhante poems have been assigned to the scrap heap by Vishwapani.
He considered
Amateur
himself a
literary
poet.
criticism. Was that?
He considered himself a poet. I wonder what his opinion would have been.
I don't think you'd have liked me saying that. No. I had to wait before he died before I said it publicly. Well, he might have agreed, actually. I wonder if, even just in terms of quantity, about 2/3 of his total output was written before he was 30. So something changed after that. Okay, so I think should we start again? What we have now is question and answer session, and we the team leading the retreat team are going to be the panel. Got some questions. First, though, Naga Bodhi would like to make an announcement. Are you
Yes.
there, Bodhi?
Thank you, Vishwapani. Just take up a moment of your time. The show isn't over yet. However, this time tomorrow we'll have all gone home, or maybe arrived at home again, knowing it slightly differently to how we knew it a week ago. So we are moving into the last phase of the retreat, and obviously we hope that you've found it a really valuable, rewarding and worthwhile experience to be on retreat with us, doing what we're doing. And if this is your first Zoom retreat, we also hope that you found that an interesting departure, because I suspect that the future is going to contain more of these things. And there are obviously disadvantages to not coming together in the usual way, but perhaps there are advantages in the way that some of us just wouldn't be here if it was being done live and in the flesh. I can see Padma Siddhi sitting there. He certainly wouldn't be. I think it's very unlikely Padma Siddhi would be on this retreat if it wasn't by Zoom, given that he's in Melbourne. But yes, this time tomorrow we would have all sort of headed home. We would have had to spend time in the morning clearing up, cleaning Adhisthana. I usually end up with the toilets, but all that is avoided, including too the cost of getting to and from Adhisthana. So we are saving quite a bit of money by not being on retreat at Adhisthana. But as soon as I mention money, this does lead me into making a little bit of a suggestion, which is that as you know, you've all paid, I think, just £5 as a kind of deposit, they call it on the website, to join the retreat. And obviously there's a request that you consider offering more, hopefully maybe considerably more. Well, we've not been at Adhisthana, but we've been given the privilege and the interesting experience of joining the morning meditation there. All the technical work behind making this possible, people being around at Adhisthana to let you in, let us in, make sure that everything's working, all that's been going on. And while we're doing what we're doing, of course, thanks to the publicity and administration carried out at Adhisthana, they've been having to maintain the place, look after the place, heat the place, look after the grounds, do much of the work that has to be done at any time there to keep the place flourishing, growing and developing as that very, very special resource that it's turning out to be for the movement and the order for now and into the future. And very obviously, we all hope that it won't be long before we're all able to be there, joining up with each other on retreats there, or gatherings, or seminars, or meetings, all the things that happen at Adhisthana. When we set up this retreat, which was before the pandemic was a twinkle in anyone's eye, we'd already agreed that we, the team, weren't going to take any money for what we're doing, that any money that's raised went into Adhisthana's coffers. And now, of course, that thought is even more relevant to the situation there. As far as I understand it, they're down about 80% on their usual turnover through this period. I mean, that's an enormous amount of income for Adhisthana to be losing, given the work that has to carry on there and the team that has to be supported to do it, now and into the future. So please, when you do come to make whatever donation you're planning to make or choosing to make for this retreat, please, really have a good think about helping Adhisthana, because everything you give really will be enormously helpful, not just to the people who live and work there, but to all of us, who are already getting so much out of the place and who are likely, to be getting so much out of it into the future. I was very privileged. When I was about 16, Martin Luther King came to London, and I was there. And I remember his talk, but I remember even better Canon Collins' appeal that he gave afterwards, where he said, look, everyone, you've probably already decided what you're going to give, haven't you? Well, it's not very much, is it? Why not double it? And there was a pause and we all laughed and some people clapped, and he said, that figure you've got in your mind now, it's not very much, is it? Why not double it? And he carried on in this vein, and what he set in motion is something I've never seen since, is a frenzy of generosity. It was nothing less than that, as people ran to the podium and handed over enormous checks and so on. But maybe that won't happen. But put it this way, I heard that Vasantra's retreat last week made £10,000 for Adhisthana. I know there's only about 30 of us, but we can do better than that. Or if not, at least we can help Adhisthana and make a real difference. It'll be very much appreciated. Thank you. Back to you, Bishop Hari. Oh, I will just say, apparently there's a button, I think, on the chat at the moment, which you can use to just make a donation, and you will be getting an email, which will also give you, a link to make your donation. Thanks. Vishwapani.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Nagbodhi. It's interesting that I'm just going to make another bit of a comment on the dana. That I've seen this happen when at centres where they've gone over to a dana economy. You need to get a new way of thinking in your mind, and it's new, given that Adhisthana normally charges. Now they're not charging, but not new in the sense that dana is the kind of basic Buddhist virtue. If you can't do anything else, you can just give. You know, if you don't know how to practice, you can give. And actually, the Buddhist world has always functioned on dana. You know, so in some Buddhist movements, or if you go to somewhere like Gaia House, you will always hear a big dana appeal that usually talks about the virtue of dana as a quality, and the virtue of doing things freely without expectations, any expectations, and then other people responding freely and generously. Okay, so that's just a little thought. So thank you to those people who have sent questions. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 questions. We're going to take an hour. 5 questions might be what enough for us, but then again it might not. So if, as things go by, I'm going to take these questions first, but if you want to add something in the chat, you can do so. Just no guarantee that we'll get around to it. But I know that sometimes questions arise when you're in the situation, which weren't there when you were just thinking about it in the abstract. Now I wonder, for those of us who are looking on on gallery view, is it possible, this is to the tech host, for us to see the panel in a row at the top?
I'm not sure about putting you in a row on the top, but I think that I can just spotlight all of you simultaneously. Let me just give it a go.
It's just that if we're on different screens and things, I mean, for example, as host, I can't see if someone's trying to, I'm the chair. I can't see if someone's trying to come in or anything like that.
Right. Are you starting to see more people?
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, great. So
I think that's it. Perfect.
Is that all 5 of you? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
well
great.
Done. There you go. It worked.
True.
You're looking a bit puzzled.
Oh, well, I had it on gallery view and we were all just splurged around the place. Now I'm on screen view, but now I can't see anybody else now.
On gallery view,
go back to gallery
view.
Yeah, we're just all separate.
Okay.
No, it doesn't matter. It's okay.
Right. So for some of us,
as long as you can see Vishwapani.
We're on gallery view, then there's a row of the retreat team across the top. So thank you very much for your questions. I think I'll just dive in with the first question. Now, there's 1 or 2 questions which are quite personal. So I won't say who's asked the very personal ones. But the others, I think, the first one, in fact, I think I have to say. But if there's one of the questions where I'm not saying who is the questioner, but you would like to contribute, then just make a comment, something like that. So let's take this one first. Okay, this is from Dana Payan. Now, I'm more of a hedgehog and a bit suspicious of the fox in me. In Bante's paper, Alienated Awareness to Integrated Awareness, He guards against spiritual bypassing. How can I tell whether I'm avoiding my experience or transcending it? So, okay, how can I tell if I'm avoiding my experience or I'm transcending it? So, who'd like to have a first go at that? Maybe I'll just nominate someone.
I don't mind.
Okay,
well, I'll kick it off anyway, if that's the right. I mean, I'm probably a bit of a hedgehog too, so it'd probably be good if we can get a fox angle on this as well. But I would think that just whatever you're doing, you just keep coming back to your actual experience. You know, whether you're dropping in an archetypal image, you know, what are the ripples from that? What is the actual experience in your body, or if you've got a more refined experience of yourself in your energy? But you keep coming back to or being aware of your actual experience. So I think, personally, I don't think you can go wrong if you do that. And if you have an you know, that you have you're developing a tendency to turn towards whatever is there, so you're doing that already in your practice, then you're less likely to be wanting to come from an avoidance, or a craving. Or if you do, you're more likely to feel that and notice that at some point. So I guess it would be those two things, maybe building a kind of building a sort of foundation of, you know, turning towards your experience, whatever it is, whatever the Vedanas are. And when something more expansive happens, that you just try and kind of keep in contact with what your actual experience is in response to that somehow. Yeah. So I guess that's what I'd say as a hedgehog.
Sona?
I'm probably more of a fox, but it occurs to me that you know, one of the great big things that Bant has always talked about has been friendship. And you know, instead of thinking you have to be in control all the time of your own, you know, processes, if you've got very close people, if you've got contact with very close people, they will notice changes in you. And if you talk to them about your experiences, there's a good chance they will help to keep you on the straight and narrow, not bypass. So I would recommend, you know, that works for me. Vidyamala's constantly giving me feedback, so it's very helpful. It's very, very helpful indeed.
Yeah. I was going to say something similar, that, you know, you need friends to prick your bubble, you know, if you are sort of getting a little bit ahead of yourself, because I think, you know, the bypassing can happen on the basis of genuine experience. It's when the ego appropriates the genuine experience that the trouble starts. And of course, the ego is very quick to appropriate just about anything going, including sublime experience. I think, going back to what Vishwapani just said, another thing is by their fruits shall ye know them. If you think you are, and you know, you have sort of transcended some aspect of self, but if you look at your behavior, you know, it's actually still very self-referring, whether in terms of generosity with money or preoccupation with self rather than others. Again, that can be a clue. You know, I think you have to be really quite honest with yourself at those times and look at, you know, what are getting the priorities in terms of your energy, your attention, your money, whatever. Is it still just you? You know, perhaps you haven't done too much attenuating of the ego drive.
The other thing that occurs to me, and I think I've seen this in practice, is views and beliefs. I think that's how we relate to our views. It's very important if you want to avoid spiritual bypassing. So, I mean, for example, in my generation of order members, there was quite a wave of people who became anagarikas quite young. And, well, none of them are anagarikas anymore. Most of them got families. So, one of the influences was, at that time, there's quite a strong belief, really, in the order that, coming from Bhante, I think, mainly, about the ideal of celibacy. And one by one, people dropped away from that. They couldn't sustain it. And so that's just an example, but I do think, and people's friends, because they were also thinking, oh, well, sex on the periphery of the mandala, the angelic life, that sort of thing, were probably encouraging the people involved. So you can't necessarily rely on your friends if you're within the same belief system. So there's no way to be safe from these things. We will make mistakes. We will get it wrong. Yeah. But views and beliefs, that's another area that we need to be quite wary of. Just notice their influence on us.
Yeah, I think that's very true, actually. Just, I wonder if we do kind of tacking, so we might lean towards kind of bypassing or lose our feet in a sense. That might be part of it. Like as Nagabodhi said, sometimes on the basis of a really genuine spiritual experience, but we appropriate it, as he said. But then given time, if we keep practicing, I think, there'll be a thirst for something more real. I suppose it's definitely in my experience that when I see that I've wavered between the two. And I guess the spiritual life is not a clean linear progression, not in my experience anyway. And I wonder if there is that tacking, like with sailing, that to go in a straight line, you actually kind of waver towards one end and then the other and then the other.
I think that's interesting, because that would be what I observe as well, that the spiritual life is a case of correcting rather than getting it perfect. So it's kind of noticing when we're getting too willful or too idealistic, and then noticing if we're getting too bogged down in the mundane. And I mean, I think, did you say that you think you're more a hedgehog? The question.
Yes, Dhanapaya said that.
Dhanapaya. So it's quite interesting, isn't it? I think this image of the hedgehog and the fox is really interesting. And what I'm wondering is that even a case of correcting? Because ideally, perhaps we have both within us.
Yeah.
We're feeding the fox and we're feeding the hedgehog. So if your tendency is more hedgehoggy, then maybe you can afford to take a bit of a risk in terms of being a bit more idealistic or, big vision. See what that's like. And I mean, in my own experience, I think I'm more of a fox, or I was.
But then you had to learn to be a hedgehog.
I've really had to learn to be a hedgehog. Yeah. And that what used to happen to me is there was a sense of crash landing back in my life. So I'd have all these lovely meditations and I thought it was bliss. I think now it was probably quite a lot of fantasy. But then I realized I'm just crash landing back in my senses and back in my body and back in my Vedana. It was very jarring and very unpleasant. So then I've had to spend probably 20 years right in the hedgehog nest. Do hedgehogs have nests? Don't know, however they burrow or something. And now I've noticed over the last few years, I'm getting a bit more foxy again. And so that's quite a big arc, isn't it? So I think maybe we could all think about which creature do we need to feed at any one time.
Yes.
Yeah, and also
are available.
Also, I think Vishwapani talking about beliefs, what I'm embarrassed to remember now is that whenever I've been in one, I've tended to think for a while that that was it. That was the one you should be in. You know, there's been a sort of definite a worldview that's kind of gone with that particular place. And then it's that's had to break down a bit before I could start balancing up the other. So yeah, that's interesting. The beliefs that kind of come with whatever part of the tacking we're in, and holding them a bit more lightly. And that's something I aspire to.
So I'm thinking that there might be one or two people who missed my talk last night and wondering what all this, that's why we've suddenly entered Beatrix Potter world and what on earth are we talking about. So just to explain that, the idea of the hedgehog and the fox comes from a philosopher called Isaiah Berlin, who was writing about Russian literature, so Dostoevsky and Tolstoy. But the important thing is, the hedgehog is an image of a way of engaging with your experience, where you know a limited amount incredibly well, because your head is down. The hedgehog snuffles around in the brush and really knows that small patch that's your home, it's the important thing in a way, really well. Now the fox is up, his head's up, it's looking around, it's sniffing the air, it sees many things. So it's completely different mode. And so, Tolstoy wrote War and Peace, it's vast novel of lots of characters, dozens of characters, history and all this sort of thing, big panorama. And Dostoevsky wrote Crime and Punishment, about one man and his conscience and his 600 pages of Russian intensity. So that gives you, and I mean, this was partly a way of just characterizing what we've been exploring on the retreat, which is really learning to come up close to our experience. That's a lot of what we've been doing, maybe. But then yesterday we were moving into a slightly different area, and if what you're really interested in is that process of coming up close, it then raises questions about, well, what's all this other stuff? Why do we need all these Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and I don't know, study and ritual and devotion? Why do I need all of that? It's not, that's all irrelevant. So that was why I introduced it. We have one more question about this from Akasha Nandi. I'm a natural hedgehog. This is in a similar way. Maybe we don't all need to comment on it, but we might have one or two comments. I'm a natural hedgehog. My yidam is but, I think. My yidam is Amitabha, infinite light, and my hero is Buzz Lightyear, to infinity and beyond. My order name means she who delights, Nandi, in infinite space, Akasha. I sometimes feel I have a wonky chariot wheel. Any suggestions? Vidyamala, maybe what you said was relevant to this. This is sort of a light-hearted version of the previous question, isn't it?
Yeah. I think is it that the natural tendency is to be hedgehoggy, and yet all the name is very big and expansive, the meditation practice is big and expansive, and how does one integrate the two? Is that the kind of question? Yeah, so I think it probably is.
Mute yourself, Kashanand, if you want to add anything. You don't have to, obviously.
I mean, my sort of, I don't know you at all, but my intuition would be, if you're naturally a hedgehog, then you can probably feel relatively confident that you're not going to spiritually bypass. Because I think hedgehogs, people who are already quite...
Looking at, because
Sorry?
they're two ends of the spectrum, and it's really encouraging seeing it in that way.
Yeah,
and I have a natural inclination towards infinity and beyond, that type of thing with Buzz Lightyear and other ways. So but a lifetime of working with children with special needs and looking at the fine details, it's both. So it's lovely to know that there's not bypassing to be tripped up by.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're naturally used to working in quite sort of detailed, grounded way, then probably you're less likely to be at risk of bypassing, I would think.
Okay.
In which case, just embrace your name and your Yadam and Buzz Lightyear. And again, I think the sense if your life starts becoming very jarring, so there's all this kind of lovely expensive stuff, and then you're just crash landing back in the mundane, then that means you're probably a bit out of balance. And just go back to doing, mindfulness of breathing and really sort of basic, not basic, I don't mean basic, but fundamental kind of grounded practices.
I also would like to say that I think this could be the basis of a song. I'm a natural hedgehog.
Good.
There's one like it from the 70s, I'm sure. I'm a natural hedgehog. Born a hedgehog son.
So look, there's a question here. Let's stay on this theme. This is from Serena. Do you have any suggestions for feeling into the heart center? I can pick up on the heartbeat and sometimes some tightness, both of which are physical sensations. But what about the more nebulous in the heart feelings? Okay, so mindfulness teachers, maybe all meditation teachers, use quite metaphorical language. And we also use, there's maybe a blurring between the things that are meant literally, like feel this part of your body, what are the sensations there, and things which might be literally connected with it. But they might not be, they might be more of a metaphor. So the heart, meaning the emotions, but it's a bit fuzzy, isn't it? The boundary between those two. Does anyone have any comments? Anyone like to have a go? How do you, maybe I'm complicating it. How do I feel into the emotional aspect of being in the heart?
Well, I guess that would be the first question would be what is it you're wanting to feel that you're not feeling when you're wanting to go into the heart? What is it that's not there in your experience that you're wanting to have? I guess that's what, you don't have to answer that if you don't want to, but unmute yourself. Let's unmute you. There you go.
If I knew, I wouldn't have a question.
Yeah, so maybe it is sort of, certainly if you were in a mindfulness class, I would sort of encourage you back just to your experience, to the experience that you're having of your body, of what you notice of your feelings, what you notice of what's going on in your mind, just to be welcoming of that, rather than having an idea of a heart center or a particular experience that you should be having. Much more to turn that sort of loving awareness to just what's going on right now and view it as being, well, learn to respond to it as enough, if you see what I mean. But we tend to kind of look for an idea of what's not there. Could that be possibly?
I suppose it's, I do hear instructions to, feel into the heart center.
Yeah. I think personally, I would never give an instruction to anything. I would give an invitation or a suggestion. And normally, I think most meditation teachers, as Vishwapani said, throw in as many different ways in for people. So you might say heart center, you might say physical, you might say, you know, you might use all sorts of language just in the hope that someone picks up on one of them and it's a way in. So it's not an instruction like go to your heart center. I mean, personally, I think in the mindfulness world that I come from anyway, and the meditation world, you're not giving instruction. You're saying things to help people into their experience.
That may be my interpretation of that's how I'm feeling that it's being said.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah, and an understandable one.
And so and there are many options. So it's not as if there is there's this set of emotions going on in sort of here. Yeah.
Yeah, and people feel things in different ways, totally different ways. But some people, they heart center, they go, oh yes, you know, I can feel that. Other people, it might be a kind of an atmosphere in the body, or an image comes in that there's a ripple from, you know, there's just all sorts of different ways into feeling. And it's more like finding your own key, you know, what works for you, what, you know, and maybe it's just gentle attention, or maybe it's something else.
Okay, so I'm being too literal and I'm being a bit too right and wrongish, basically.
Well,
maybe it's a natural question.
It is, absolutely.
So, okay. Oh, Sona wants to say something.
I was just wondering, I can really empathise with you, Serena. And I was thinking about what Vishvapani said yesterday at Wordsworth and his practice of poetry. And I think what I use is imagination a lot. Mm-hmm. So I imagine I have something going on in my heart center. It could be a whole world, a whole cosmos. Or I remember something from the past where I feel like it comes from my heart, you know, that I wanted to do something. I don't know why, but I recall that. And then a sort of mood, a feeling, as it were, comes into being. So I wouldn't say there's always a feeling there before you kind of decide what direction you want to go in. Well, I can't do that anyway. I have to have a bit of imagination to kick it off.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, so the next question is, I'm going to moderate this a little bit more. It's quite a personal question, and as I said, I won't say who the questioner is, but if you want to identify yourself, that's okay. But when I say moderate, I don't think this is the kind of question where having 5 opinions is going to be very helpful for the person. So that's all I mean. How can I work with or minimize secondary suffering when the first arrow is strong anxiety itself? Where there's no specific thought or worry about something in particular that gave rise to anxiety, but anxiety as a mental and physical state, often very painful, a fight, flight, freeze state triggered by something one has not been aware of, where there are, nor have there been, particular thoughts. That is anxiety as a physical or mental state of distress, as opposed to the state of worry, where, yes, there is thinking and ruminating. So there's a few things in that, but just what I'm getting from it is, you know, my primary experience is anxiety. It's not that that doesn't seem to be a secondary thing. What can I do? And it's strong. Yeah, this is very strong. Now, would anyone on the panel like to respond? I do have a thought myself, but anyone feel they'd like to respond? Okay, shall I say my thought?
Say yours.
And look, Yeah, I mean, firstly, just to acknowledge that talking about it in this kind of context, you know, when it's such a personal question, we're not even in the same space physically. You know, that's not, you know, there's obviously very strong feelings involved and very, very difficult experiences. But the thought that comes to my mind, I want to just point out something about the way the question's written, which is, first of all, I think you're saying that this is really primary. So it's just a very, very difficult experience. And, you know, what on earth can you do about it? It's just a given in your life. And I think really kindness is so important. I mean, it did make me think a little bit, because I saw this question earlier, of Vidyamala's experience of pain. And the pain isn't going away. And in the end, you know, there's kindness is really important in just being able to experience it, able to feel it, able to live when that's going on. The other thing that I noticed in the question is that you also seem to be saying that there's a flight, fight, or freeze state that's triggered by something that you've not been aware of. So that starts to make it sound as if it's secondary, because there's trigger and you don't know if there's something primary that's causing this anxiety because it's not conscious. So I just noticed that there would seem to be two different ways of identifying what the experience is. First of all, it's a given, it's a primary thing. And secondly, there's thought, well, maybe there is something that's causing this, but it's beyond my conscious awareness. And again, I think kindness and self-compassion is really important. When you just have a sense that there's something there that's outside of your experience in some way. Kindness, maybe finding the right person to talk to, like a therapist, can help with bringing something in that feels like it's outside your, it's unconscious at the moment. Yeah, those are my thoughts. But I think really kindness is going to be an important part of it.
I think kindness is the context you create. Yeah, and that's where a friend helps, because you might not be able to generate it for yourself if you're so lost in it. But I think this is a place where, following on from what Vidyamala said yesterday about coming very close, being prepared, having the courage to be very close to it and finding, maybe very gently, unpicking the physical from the mental. Sitting with it, in other words, when I've not been in the place the question is describing with that kind of intensity, but I've been in some pretty dark places sometimes, and where it's hard to know what's going on, and just sitting with it and disentangling what's the physical experience, and in a way starting with that really simple technique of moving out of the mind into the body, and then maybe little piece by piece things start to clarify, separate out a little bit, and there's a little bit of room to see gaps, to be slightly less overwhelmed by the sense of an absolutely constant, relentless internal stance, but that there's a dynamic. It is actually in movement. There are conditions coming and going, rising and falling within the state, which might start to give clues. There might be thoughts, there might be images. But I think, generally speaking, things just start to clarify out if we can get out of the thought stream, and particularly if they're panicky thought streams, into the body, into what's just happening on that really simple, basic level of right now. What am I feeling on that level? And just seeing what it reveals, giving it time. but that does, as you say, that I think requires a lot of kindness and courage to do that if it's so painful. But in all probability, yes, you say there was once a first arrow, but if things start, like as in the case of relapsing depression, in a sense, a point comes where the anxiety or the depression does become, at least within a small time frame, the primary arrow. In itself, but then you can maybe unpick it. And it may not be necessary to go all the way back to the beginning, just to start realizing that this is something that you could be bigger than by bringing a warm, loving awareness to it, or start to open things up and give a change of the way you're holding it or being held by it. I mean, you might have more to say, Vijayamala, because you introduced this theme yesterday.
So, do you want to say maybe one more answer? Because I just think lots of answers going to be, don't want to turn this into one of those things that you talk about. But yeah, Vidyamala, do you have any thoughts?
I'll just try and keep it very brief. I think what Nagabodhi's saying, I agree with, and the reality is the body is going to be really unpleasant. So the way we're talking about it might sound like if you do all these things, then somehow it's going to be pleasant. It is just it's having the kind of even just understanding that if it's really, really unpleasant, doesn't mean to say you're doing something wrong and your mindfulness practice isn't working. It will, the physical side will also be unpleasant. So then how do you work with great intensity that's unpleasant? And one of the models that I use that we use at Breathworks is if you feel overwhelmed, then broaden your awareness to be aware of other things. And if you feel it, on the other hand, if you're a bit dissociated and cut off, then come closer. And then that kind of makes it interesting because you're doing this dynamic of moving towards, and then, it's just too much. Then what else is present at the moment? What am I hearing? What am I smelling? The light through the window. And then I find that very interesting working with physical pain, because then I've actually got something quite delicate and sensitive that I'm calibrating between sort of denial and overwhelm, and that becomes a whole practice in itself, with kindness, of course. And then the other thing that we haven't touched on at all really is sometimes actually meditation is just not what you need at that moment. You might need to go to the gym or go for a swim, or sometimes actually just sitting there with really intense stuff. I certainly find sometimes, I've got a hand cycle in the backyard and I think, I just need to do 20 minutes on the hand cycle, and that shifts my energy. So sometimes just sitting there with great pain isn't what we need. We need maybe something else at that time. Just a thought. Just to kind of shift the energy. Yeah. Thank you for the question, whoever asked that question. Very brave question.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And, we're just thinking, hopefully, there's some use in what we've said. Different things have been said for you. So I'm going to take a question that's appeared in the chat. And then hopefully we'll have time to come back to a question from Karuna Natha about the arts and beauty. But I think this might be helpful to talk about. So this is from Angie. There was a talk at the beginning, and I think this is Nagabodhi's talk, about how much secular mindfulness had influenced and enriched their practice. No, actually, I'm not sure whose talk that was. My question is the converse. How much has Buddhism influenced and enriched your secular mindfulness teaching? Where are the boundaries? Well, that's quite a big area, isn't it? And look, Vidyamala, I'm going to come to you again because, that you've really pioneered that work with Breathworks. So maybe if we hear from you and then from one of the MBCT people, there's three of us, and just compare notes on it. Okay.
Okay, good. For many, many years, I had quite a lot of inner conflict between, doing the secular mindfulness and in my life as a Buddhist. And it generally went something like this. Oh, why am I doing breath work? So I should just be a full-time Buddhist. Somehow I'm not giving people everything. And then the next question will be, yeah, but it's so helpful to people. Secular mindfulness is so helpful to people, and it's reaching lots of people that would never come to a Buddhist center. So I'd resolve it for about 2 minutes, and then I'd go around the loop again. And I've resolved it with an image. So I'll just say the image, and then we can hear from others. And the image is that I need to do both. Well, the answer is I need to do both, and they sort of they feed each other. And the image is of a sun, a blazing sun in a dark sky. And my life as a Buddhist is at the center of the sun, where I've got all of Buddhism at my disposal. I've got ritual and devotion, ethics, meditation, myth, Sangha, all those, like my life in the order. And then my life at Breathworks is where the rays of the sun meet the darkness. It's working right at that sort of interface between the light and the dark. And the brighter the light, the further those rays will shine out into the darkness. And I don't want to just be always right in the middle of the sun, because what about the darkness? But if I was just in the darkness, that wouldn't be satisfying either, because I really love being resourced and part of creating a great big massive sun in the sky. So I guess it's kind of so that totally resolved it, and I'm very clear. I just need to do both. It's kind of, and I just
Vidyamala,
yes.
The question: how much has Buddhism influenced and enriched your secular mindfulness teaching? Where are the boundaries? Just wondering about the ways in which you have taken what was there from John Kabat-Zinn and informed that with your practice as a Triratna Buddhist.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, sorry if I didn't.
No, I think everything you said is relevant, but I just wanted to.
Okay, well, I mean,
first part of an answer what you said. There's more.
Yeah, so a very specific example is I learned from John Kabat-Zinn. But I'd found, as a Triratna Buddhist, alternating the mindfulness of breathing and the metta bhavana, as I'd been taught at a beginner's class, 1987, I'd found that dynamic really, really helpful. So when I developed Breathworks, that's exactly what we did. We've got 50% mindfulness, 50% loving kindness, which is not exactly the same as some of the other secular mindfulness programs. So that came straight out of my Triratna training. And I think also I've learned in Triratna about the Bodhisattva ideal. And yeah, that's obviously just a kind of, it can seem just like an idea. It's something that comes from Mahayana Buddhism, but I'm really, really moved by that. So again, that work, working where the light meets the darkness is an expression of that. So I would say Buddhism's influenced and enriched my secular mindfulness teaching a great deal. That would be my simple answer, a great deal. And then I'm always sort of juggling between being at the sun and being in the darkness. Yeah.
Okay.
Simple answer there, eventually.
Nagabodhi or Vimlachita, anything you'd like to say?
On Vimlachita. You're muted. You're muted, Vimlachita.
There you go, unmuted. Yeah, I think recently, I think when we were teaching secular mindfulness for the first several years, or whatever, we were always very careful to be upfront about being Buddhist, but then be careful that we weren't trying to bring it in by the back door somehow, because people are quite sensitive to that. So we kept it quite kind of clear. And also it's the 8-week Bangor kind of course that we're running is a beautiful course, and there was so much I learned from it, as we said. But what I found limiting about it was the well-being goal, as it were. That to me, you know, Buddhism is way beyond well-being, and actually not, you know, well-being doesn't sum it up in any way. So what I've found really useful is now realizing there's a whole kind of generation of people that have done the initial 8-week courses, who maybe haven't become Buddhists, but are really open to working with their minds in a deeper way. And they've already got the foundation of the 8-week course. And so when we do our follow-on courses, we've done courses on compassion, sort of using the Metta Bhavana and the 4 Brahma Viharas, or we've used Vedana, or we've used, you know, we've done Buddhist context courses. So there have been ways that we've been able to kind of feed the bigger picture in to people that are where there is receptivity for that, quite definitely. And those people might not yet have stepped over into the Buddhist world, but they want to go deeper with their mindfulness. And in a way that I don't know any other way of going deeper than using, starting to use those sort of Buddhist models. And that does mean then that sometimes people step over the bridge, as it were, into Buddhism. So I think that, yeah, I've wanted to bring it in. And now I do feel there are so many people that have done the 8-week courses, whether it's Breathworks or MBCT or MBSR. And you can see in some of the universities that some of the follow-on courses are much more kind of touched by Buddhism. There's more room to kind of bring it in. And it's more satisfying, actually, to be able to do that.
Okay, I'll just make a brief comment on that, and maybe I'll have time for the last question. So my comment is that for me, and I think for actually, if you look at who the senior and respected teachers are in the mindfulness world, they all have some kind of really serious spiritual practice, which isn't entirely contained by, you know, the contents of an 8-week course, well, certainly an MBCT course. I mean, a lot of them are Buddhists, some of them are Christians. Some people are quite a lot of people are engaged with the Vipassana community, which doesn't call itself Buddhist, but actually is really in many ways in a sort of secularized form. John Kabat-Zinn, one of the times I've met him, he said to me, Buddhism is the well on which I draw. So, I mean, I think his kids had bar mitzvahs and things, but, you know, nonetheless, that's his spiritual practice. So, you know, I think of it as depth and breadth. I'm really, really, really into the mindfulness movement for its breadth, but I don't think you can look to it for depth. People have to find that somehow, somewhere else. And a lot of people find that in their Buddhist practice. So the last question is this from Karunanatha, and this might just have to be, you know, like when you have these panel things on the telly or the radio or something, you just go around and have a quick, very quick answer. Following the talk last night around Tintern Abbey, I'd be interested to find out how the arts and beauty form part of your practice, or indeed whether they do. And what in particular do you find inspiring? So, like the hosts say on Radio 4, very quick answer, just one sentence from Nagabodhi.
I wish I spent more time with poetry, not least after last night. I hadn't read Tintern Abbey since doing English literature at university, but I was amazed at how alive it still is in me. And you know, from what you triggered, I thought, good heavens, I'm wasting my time not spending more time there. I think of the arts, I think if I think of higher art in my life in relation to my kind of spiritual aspiration, then it would be music probably. That feeds me. I mean, I'm very immersed in film, you know, I've worked in it once, but I think if I'm talking in terms of my spiritual life, music at the moment feeds me most.
Okay, great. So I'm just going to ask everyone for one thought. Vimalachita.
Oh.
You don't have a thought?
Well, can it be two?
Yeah, two thoughts. Two thoughts.
I think just, well, it's not really art, but it's nature. I suppose I just find nature incredibly inspiring and yeah, just stunningly beautiful and all the rest of it. And yes, poetry, and particularly when I'm leading or co-leading a retreat, I feel I come into a whole different relationship with poetry than when I just read it at home, when I use it for a meditation or something. I just think there's just, you know, so much beauty and meaning and depth, and talking of touching the heart, it really feels like it goes straight in.
Sona?
You're muted, Sona.
Sona, you're mute. Unmute.
Keeps muting me. I would say that I get from the arts is radical new ways of looking at things.
Okay.
Literature.
All right, that was succinct. Thank you. And Vidyamala.
Nature and wilderness.
Nature and wilderness. Yeah. Okay, good. So I'll have my little, just on time. So I have been reflecting. I think this is something about art with a capital A. I have been realizing that you need a little bit of discipline about it. So Al Foxton House really inspired me to, with Wordsworth and Coleridge, and I've been reading loads about them and really, then teaching and reflecting. And something else happens. And I've just realized that over these, what tends to happen with reading is a new novel comes out, so you read that. And then a friend lends you a book, and then you read that. And then there's a new Dharma book, so you read that. And then you see, and then you don't read anything for a while. And then it doesn't really, it's very piecemeal, and that's what happens, and the years go by. And so I think just focusing interest in the arts, focusing what you read, what you listen to. I've got Amazon Music. There's 50 million songs on Amazon Music. What if I want to make this part of my Dharma life? I need to be a bit more intentional about it. And then you can start to go more deeply into things and reflect more deeply on an author or a musician or a composer or an artist or whatever it might be. But really find what it is that you love and that sparks you, and pursue that. Because we have so much choice these days, it can all be rather superficial. So, okay, well, we're just past 5:15, which is time. Lovely. So we're coming back at 7:30. So thanks to everyone on the panel. Thanks to you all for your questions.
Thanks to you, Shapani, for moderating it so well, chairing it so well. Yeah, very good.
Yes.
Lovely.
And thank you for listening, everybody, to us. Thank you very much.
Please tune in next week or catch up with us on the podcast.
Buddhist question time. All right. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Good. See you later, everybody.